Now we want to turn to the White House, where President Trump is now looking for a new attorney general after finally forcing Jeff Sessions to quit. The former Alabama senator delivered an emotional goodbye to Justice Department staffers last night. Sessions is now one of 41 high-ranking Trump administration officials to resign or to be fired in less than 2 years. Major Garrett is here with the move that's been talked about for months.
I could fire everybody right now.
In the longest press conference of his presidency,
I could end it right now.
President Trump declared he could fire Special Counsel Robert Mueller.
It should have never been started.
But has allowed him to continue the Russia investigation he once again called a disgrace. The president also dodged questions about looming high-level staff shakeups.
Your Attorney General and your Deputy Attorney General, do they have long-term job security?
I'd rather answer that at a little bit different time. We're looking at a lot of different things.
Less than 24 hours after polls closed, the Justice Department released this undated letter from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, offering his resignation at the president's request. The relationship began with a stadium endorsement from then Senator Sessions.
Make America great again.
But the bond,
you know, he's an incredible guy.
Soured soon after the inauguration when a newly confirmed attorney general disappointed the president.
He should have never recused himself.
Sessions did not appoint Mueller as special counsel, but his recusal from the Russia investigation, the president believes, made the appointment much more likely.
I put an attorney general that never took control of the Justice Department, Jeff Sessions.
The new acting attorney general, former U.S. attorney and Republican Senate candidate Matthew Whitaker, criticized Mr. Trump during the 2016 campaign.
It doesn't seem right now that anything sticks to him, even being a misogynist.
But in recent months defended the president, even suggesting ways to undermine the Mueller probe.
That attorney general doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces his budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
All right, for more on what this means for the ongoing Mueller investigation, we are joined by New York Law School professor Rebecca Roiphe. She's a former assistant district attorney for New York County. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So, Rebecca, the Washington Post editorial board issued its opinion, and I want to quote what they say. Jeff Sessions' ouster is not surprising, but it is still shocking. It then went on to say, in part, Mr. Sessions' sin was not that he was insufficiently wedded to the president's agenda. Indeed, the attorney general was perhaps the most effective member of the cabinet in advancing Trumpist policies. Rather, the president complained that Mr. Sessions failed to protect him as a hired lawyer protects a private client from legitimate law enforcement inquiries. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I actually think it's very well put, because the thing is that it isn't surprising at this point. We've come to expect this from the president, especially this way of treating lawyers as a means to an end rather than advisors who actually give you an understanding of what your limits ought to be. So I think that's 100% true, but I think we shouldn't forget to be shocked when these norms are broken. And so I think that's a really good way of putting it. The president can fire the attorney general for any reason. If their relationship broke down, he's permitted to fire the attorney general, but there are norms about that, and you generally do not fire somebody because they've stood in the way of some personal issue that you care about. It's not normally done.
Can you just explain to the audience? I mean, the attorney general is, most people know what an attorney general does, but specifically under the Constitution, it's part of the executive branch, but the attorney general is not the president's personal lawyer.
No, there are a number of lawyers within the executive who are not serving the president. The president has his own personal attorneys, but the attorney general, among a few others, is a lawyer for the executive and represents the government and the government's interest.
Right, and people should be reminded that part of the reason why Sessions recused himself is not just because he was sort of pals with the president. It's because he actually worked on the campaign with the president. It's not because he endorsed him.
Right.
So he was sort of intertwined in that Mueller investigation, which brings me to the Mueller investigation. That's the big question everyone's asking. What's going to happen then?
Well, there are a couple of different possibilities. I mean, look, we can all give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he's going to do what a good lawyer in this position would do, which is to allow the investigation to come to its natural end. Then there are two other possibilities. One is he could get rid of the special counsel regulations, which restrict his ability to fire Bob Mueller. If he did that, then he could fire Bob Mueller right away without any restrictions at all. Short of that, which would be a kind of political nightmare, I think, he could kill the Mueller investigation with a lot of little cuts. So he can cut the budget, he can refuse to allow certain things to go forward, like subpoenas and indictments, but the regulations do put limits on that. So he's only supposed to do that if what Bob Mueller is doing is like really outside the norm of the department. So given that, if he abides by those norms, then there is some protection, but that's a big if.
I think people might also wonder just what happens to Rod Rosenstein. He was the guy in charge of this.
Rod Rosenstein just goes back to his day job. I mean, you know, he just goes back to supervising what the other Department of Justice attorneys are doing every day.
All right, so the new acting attorney AG, Matt Whitaker, wrote this in an op-ed last year. It is time for Rosenstein to order Mueller to limit the scope of his investigation to the four corners of the order appointing him special counsel. As you know, we've had an election. Democrats are now in control of the House, or at least they will be in January. The Constitution invests a lot of authority in Congress. If the special counsel's office is bled dry, for lack of a better word, by the Attorney General, whoever that may be, what is Congress's ability to continue that investigation?
Well, Congress has some ability to continue the investigation. I think what it would really do is sort of use its oversight powers to find out what ultimately happened and make that public.
Like subpoena.
Subpoena. So they can conduct some kinds of investigation, but they're much better at overseeing an investigation that the Department of Justice is doing than doing their own investigation.
If the scope of what was made public was somehow hindered by the executive branch or by the Attorney General, could Congress, as somebody floated this idea to us earlier, could Congress call Robert Mueller to testify, and by that, the American people would know what he's uncovered?
Yes. They can do that. They can call him to testify. They can subpoena documents. They can subpoena other witnesses. They could subpoena Whitaker. So for sure, they can try to figure out what happened. And I think, you know, ultimately they will be able to do that, which I think leaves some people perplexed about why President Trump would do this at this final hour. And maybe there's something imminent that he's trying to stop.
So there's been a lot of speculation as to who could become the next Attorney General. And we're learning that former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is being considered to replace Jeff Sessions. What can we expect, or when can we expect a decision like this to be made? Do you think they'll wait till after January? Or I mean, because Whitaker can't stay there forever. Or how long?
Unless they make him the AG.
Whitaker can stay a really long. No, they can't.
As an interim, he can stay there a really long time.
They can't make him the They can't make him the AG under the Vacancies Reform Act. He can't become the AG. But first of all, he can stay there for 210 days, which is a really long time, and that can be extended because he can stay there during the time after that the president is confirming a new attorney general. And if that fails, the whole clock starts again. So he could be there a really long time.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, these laws were really meant to put in place a career. You know, if somebody was appointed pursuant to this law, it was meant to put in place a career DOJ person who would just be, you know, there, who would do what the DOJ normally does. Unfortunately, Whitaker doesn't really fit that profile, and that's problematic.
So if you've been living under a rock, everybody was saying it's only a matter of time that the Attorney General is not going to be the Attorney General for much longer. Presumably, a guy who's much smarter than me, his name is Robert Mueller, also was aware of that. What kind of protections? I've been hearing a lot of reporting, and I don't know the legalities around it, that he has certain documents that he's already given the judges across this country, whether it's the Southern District of New York, that are ready to go at the moment that whatever happens from the president's side happens.
Well, there are a number.
What would that be?
Right. There are a number of things that could have happened, and it's hard to, you know, peer through this opaque door and know what happened. But a couple of things. First of all, he could create documents and reports, put them in some drawer. They're ready for a subpoena if a subpoena ultimately happens.
Indictments too?
Indictments he could have ready to go, and you know, he usually files his indictments on Fridays, so stay tuned for tomorrow.
Wow. That's interesting.
And he could also have sealed indictments. So there could be indictments that have already been filed that are sealed. So that's another possibility. I mean, we really don't know.
Sealed meaning that they...
Meaning that they've already happened, but that
we
they're
don't know
private.
about them.
So
we don't know who's... We don't. So a sealed... With a sealed indictment, we don't know anything at all, or do we get a little bit of information?
No, we would have had no information until that indictment is unsealed.
But the person who's been indicted would know?
Possibly not.
Oh, see, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So who knows then? A judge?
Yes.
And the special counsel?
And the grand jury.
But not the executive branch.
Not the executive branch.
Fascinating.
Interesting. Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come back on Friday. Come back tomorrow.
Yeah, right. I'm here.
All right.